before Thursday started, I was doing these basement shows. That's kind of all I thought I would really do, was be somebody who was like a supporter of music. I never thought I'd play music. You know, to me, it's just enough to be involved with people that I think are really talented and sweet and making passionate, sincere music. That's what I wanted to be involved in, was to be there, part of the support network that makes it happen. And then when Thursday started playing, it was just to be a part of those shows, just to kind of get to play with our friends and some of our heroes and stuff like that. Around the time that we were starting, the Bouncing Souls had just really started to do national touring, and we're never home in New Brunswick. So they were kind of this band that we were all super proud of, and we knew that they were our band, that we knew that they were the New Brunswick band. You know, they had done all these shows before. There were all these legendary stories of them throwing toilets off the roof of their house and just being crazy guys. To me, one of the bands that I connected the most to was Lifetime. You know, theme song for a New Brunswick basement show. It's like, to me, that song meant so much. You know, even though it's just a dumb song about playing in the basement, it also represented kind of like the paradigm of what was going on at the time, and the fact that we didn't need anybody else's approval, that our culture was self-contained. And it wasn't exclusive, it just was, it didn't need anything from anyone. And that was a huge inspiration. And then probably the band that's most overlooked from New Brunswick is You and I, this sort of really heavy, sincere, emotional band. They're totally what I wanted Thursday to be like. We were never going to be as heavy as them, and we were never going to be as raw. There were a lot of things of theirs that we couldn't emulate, even if we tried. And for the better, you know, because we ended up becoming our own band. But we played one of You and I's last shows as one of our first. I ended up living with them, and Tom from You and I did all the screams on Full Collapse. So he was like a surrogate member and kind of also like a mentor, and they're just a totally underrated, overlooked band. And then recently, there's this joke that people were calling it the wave, you know, that they were calling it like the last great wave of emo, screamo, whatever. And it's this thing where it was returned to like this crazy DIY ethic of doing basements and living rooms and bookstores and stuff like that. And some of the bands were just like spoken word, like a band like La Dispute, that were telling stories. And to me, I love that, because narrative was one of the big things that I wanted Thursday to tackle. I wanted to change the perspective of the narrative. I wanted to have the narrative feel more inclusive and not be about like I, me, you know, things like that. So La Dispute I find really inspiring that way. I'm so proud that they're friends of ours and that they look up to us and cite us as an influence. And for me, probably one of the biggest torchbearers now that I really feel like I got to pass that torch along to is a band called Touche Amore from LA. Jeremy, when he was much younger, was a big Thursday fan and was always supporting us. And when he gave me, I had seen some of his other bands that he played guitar in and was always like, you know, I'll come see you guys because you've always been so great to us. But then he gave me the Touche Amore demo, and I was floored at how good it was, you know. It reminded me of like American Nightmare and all these great bands that I loved when I was younger. And I had the privilege of putting out their first record, and now they're on Death Wish and do all these other things. But to see, like, I was just in Australia and I saw them play in front of like 500 kids who knew every word. It was just so real, you know what I mean? They had never tried to make it big. It was such a passionate response. It reminded me of when Full Collapse was first out, and I just felt like it doesn't matter that these bands actually sound nothing like Thursday, because that's never what was important. You know what I mean? It was the heart and the spirit of the thing. It was breaking down the walls between crowd and band, you know, making sure that everybody knew that the promoter and that the kid selling zines and the band and the tech and the kid in the front row singing along, like that they were all on the same level. We played a show in New Jersey at Giant Stadium with Radiohead, Bright Eyes, Elliott Smith shortly before he died, and I just remember watching all these bands that I loved, and some of them that I grew up on, some of them that I was friends with, and feeling like we belonged, not like we were just kind of encroaching on somebody else's turf. And it was pouring rain. It was crazy downpour. They asked us if we even wanted to go on because there was an inch of water on stage, and it was lightning out. And I just looked at like the 2,000 people huddled in front of the stage with umbrellas and ponchos and raincoats, and I thought, like, are you kidding? They can do it, why can't we do it? You know, and that was a real high point. One time it was Bike Week in Daytona, and we were just trying to find somewhere that we could sleep in the van without having a million, you know, motorcycles revving their engines. And so we found this empty parking lot that there were no bikers in, and we were like, oh, this is great, no bikers, this is incredible. We go to sleep soundly. sun comes out and we're hearing like all these revving engines, giant revving engines. And I remember thinking like, they have some crazy bike. And it turned out that we weren't in a parking lot, that we had pulled onto a small airstrip. And so there were planes getting warmed up to go flying for the day, like prop planes that had a kind of like crazy motorcycle sound to them. And I remember Steve being like, we gotta get out of here, we're on an airstrip. So that was, that was in the pre-9/11 days of us not being in Guantanamo for being parked on an airstrip. A more recent low point would be on the Taste the Chaos tour in like 2009. We were playing Canada and it was snowing and it was crazy. It was so cold, and we ended up playing a town that, I don't know, it doesn't even need a name. Can't remember it. That's how memorable it was. But we were in this giant old movie theater, beautiful old movie theater, probably held 1,800 people. And by the time we played, there had to be 75 or 80 people in the venue in this snowy, crazy, kind of Hoth planet version of a country. And I remember getting just a little too drunk before we played. Instead of getting loose, I started talking about how if it's supposed to be a movie theater, what kind of a movie they were watching right now, if it was a tragic comedy, or if it was a disaster film, or like what was it, And at one point I said we were Cobra Starship, and somebody actually went to our merch booth and asked how come Thursday wasn't playing tonight. We were like 10 songs in, like they couldn't tell that we weren't Cobra Starship. That was the most depressing part, was that somebody who actually liked us was like, I don't know, I guess it's not Thursday. Spent our whole 20s in it, and now we're in our 30s ending it. So it's really, it's definitely like who I am as a person has been shaped completely by being in Thursday. And for me and Tucker, we're both only children. So it was, 13 years of living with somebody in a van or a bus is enough to, now I know what it's like to have brothers. That's been kind of, for me, the biggest part of it, aside from getting to, experience making art and living dreams and all those things that are incredible too. Really, it's just to really understand companionship and understand better people. Before I actually, when I was a freshman in college, before I started the band, I had a really hard time looking people in the eyes because I was so shy. And so Thursdays really cured me of being shy, which has been like a great thing that I get to keep with me always from it. But also, just making such incredible music with such great people, people who want to give and aren't like, like my guys, they don't look into a situation of what angle of how much they can take from it, and I love that. I love that about my guys, and I feel like it's a culture we cultivated together, in the band, of how to treat people, and I really love it. We would always do these holiday shows, and we were talking about maybe just getting together the whole band and calling out any Thursday fans and going out sort of in that week between Christmas and Thanksgiving and working at shelters and doing stuff like that together. Maybe like playing acoustic at night with all the kids. And Thursday had always encouraged people to get more involved in nonprofits. And I think to me that's like the era of punk that I grew up in that was so socially active and socially conscious. Like I'd like to give that to people. And to find out, that kids that grew up with us back then are now working in so many great fields, whether it's ACLU or Amnesty International, all these places that they're working. It makes me really proud that we were the band that they grew up on. And I'd love to continue to give that to people, because I think once you kind of find a way to give of yourself, it's like the best thing that you can discover in yourself. So yeah, that's like one thing that we've been talking about. I mean, we were just talking about like how to keep Thursday, not even as far as a legacy, but how to keep the guys involved with each other. Because you go different paths in your life. We'll have to get different jobs or do different projects. We've been trying to figure out how to make it like a mandatory meetup every year, for us.